Your boys Socrates and Pluto and Napoleon are here, and this is the Syringes Podcast. How we all feeling today?
Fine, Gino. Thank you for asking.
Good. So, today we'll be covering the case of Antonio Beaver, who served 10 years in the Missouri prison for a carjack he did not commit. Bryce, how do you feel about that?
I think that it is just truly terrible that he
Really
was
terrible
convicted of a
thing.
crime he did not commit.
He didn't even commit
It's
it.
wrong.
I heard that what happened was I think it was on August 15th, 1996, a 26-year-old white woman went to the St. Louis parking lot, and she was attacked. Well, what happened was, so there was a man who pretended that he needed help with his car. So obviously she led him to her car, and when they got there, he pulled out a screwdriver and attacked her, and ended up taking the car. Which, again, that sucks, right? I mean, that's horrible. No one.
The suspect of the crime was 5'10" and clean shaven. Mr. Beaver was 6'2" with a full mustache.
How do you get that wrong? He also has a notable gap between his teeth, like that one guy, Michael Strahan.
Who is
Oh my
Michael
God.
Strahan?
Pull up a picture of Michael Strahan real quick. We'll see this resemblance right here. It's like two of the same. Like you could see, like that's Michael Strahan, a former football player.
Okay.
Very good, I heard. He still does stuff on ESPN, I believe. And they have the same gash in their tash, if you know what I mean, right down the middle.
Yep.
And so basically, what happened was in the trial, 6 days later, Beaver was charged with first-degree robbery and tried in April 1997. The victim testified that Beaver was the man who attacked her, which again makes no sense because before she claimed that the man was 5'10", but Mr. Beaver is obviously, like Bryce said, 6'2". How does that make sense? I mean, that just doesn't compute. Speaking of Mr. Beaver, damn, that's a shame. As you can
Truly,
see here,
it's just a damn shame.
It is a damn shame. As you can see, the evidence, the evidence we have backing Mr. Beaver. Scratch that. We don't have evidence. We have no evidence supporting that.
How many years were taken from him?
10 years.
10 years.
Actually, were taken from him.
Mhm.
What was
10
the original
years.
sentence?
Original sentence was I believe it was
18 years.
18
Sentenced
years.
to
Yeah.
18 years in prison. Crime he did not commit.
Interesting.
Do you know how much he could have done in 10 years?
How many sandwiches he could have made?
How many sandwiches he could have made? What? What is it? Like 10,000 sandwiches? Look at that man in the picture. That's what he could have been doing. But instead he was serving 10 years. For shame. For shame. Here he is again. Just a little picture, like, you know, just remember who he is. Antonio Beaver.
This is him actually after he was released from.
Which is very nice. It's good to know that he was released from prison years later, though, in 2007. Which, again, is very sad that 10 years of his life was taken away for a crime that he did not commit.
Well, if you don't mind me asking, where did this all take place?
This all took place in Missouri, actually, and as you can see here, Missouri is the compromise line. Free state territory right there in the blue. But this all took place in Missouri, which reminds me of this right here.
By chance remember what it is or no?
Yeah, the compromise of Missouri. Compromise
Okay.
line.
Any feed in this, Socrates, or no?
Bryce, you got anything to say?
Not about the Missouri Compromise. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're right. Let's get back to Mr. Beaver. Yeah, that's fine.
It was actually DNA testing that he requested that proved him innocent in 2006.
The Innocent Project accepted Beaver's case, filed another brief on his behalf in 2006 as well. The state agreed to testing on the blood swab inside the car door in October 2006, and the result proved that Mr. Beaver could not have committed this crime, as of course he was not the same person that attacked the young lady.
Was the actual suspect ever caught or no?
Uh, yes, I do believe that a Let's just type that up here. I do believe that eventually, wouldn't you agree, Bryce, that he did eventually get caught?
Oh
I
yeah,
want,
I would
yeah.
definitely agree.
I
Actually,
definitely
the
agree.
man who was caught for the crime was actually already in prison by the time that they did the DNA testing.
Yes,
Oh, I
alternative
see.
perpetrator was identified, and he was exonerated by DNA.
Okay. And what was
Well,
Mr. Beaver convicted with?
he was convicted with first-degree robbery, and was exonerated by DNA again. This was not a death penalty case, however, and
Luckily.
luckily, this was not a death penalty case. He did serve 10 years of his life, which is truly sad. 10 years you'll never get back, but uh, it's a horrible thing to get wrongly convicted. What do you think, Bryce? Do you think that this is bad as...
It's truly terrible. I mean, 10 years is a lot of time, as we've previously mentioned. I mean, that's a lot of sandwiches, whatever. Could have done a lot in that time. It's just really sad, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's very something you don't want to happen to people you really care about, and truly, I hope right now that Antonio Beaver or Mr. Beaver is living his best life and is somewhere where he is safe and where he is loved and where he is taken care of.
Do we know if he
Uh,
was compensated for his time in jail or no?
uh, yes, he was actually compensated for his time in jail. I'm pretty sure what do you he was compensated, right, Bryce?
I believe so.
Do they
Yeah.
is the amount of money or belongings that was compensated undisclosed?
Uh, I think that he was given a some amount of
Mr.
money.
Beaver
However,
was given $181,000 for his 10 years
one
in
Oh,
prison.
hundred
okay,
eighty thousand
okay,
dollars.
okay,
That
okay.
is a lot. But I do think that while he was given a lot of money, that won't get back the 10 years that he had to spend in prison for a crime he did not commit. It could have been almost 20 years because of
A wrongful conviction.
Yeah,
a wrongful
if they didn't
conviction.
find the DNA,
Exactly.
if they hadn't found the DNA, he would have been in for almost
Yeah.
20 years, huh?
I mean, even if you hadn't requested the DNA evidence, like testing, he could have been locked up for 18 years. Just truly wrong.
Okay, and going back to the DNA, are you guys aware where the DNA was actually found?
It was actually found in the car door. I remember reading on how they swabbed the blood from the man on the car door, and they were able to identify the right person
Okay.
who actually did.
Was the man arrested? The actual suspect, was he arrested because of this case, or was he arrested due to other crimes that he committed during the time of Mr. Beaver's imprisonment?
Um,
The actual person who committed the actual crime was already in prison by the time the DNA was tested.
this is true. This did happen. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Which again, the whole DNA testing thing is just really amazing. I feel like if a lot of cases, say for example the O.J. Simpson case, if it was to be tried today, or at least around like you know early 2010s, like it would have been much easier to convict him. And I think that is because of the progression of technology and DNA testing,
Okay.
which is just amazing to me. Really, really something great there.
Okay, going back to the original conviction, Socrates, would you mind commenting on how he was originally convicted, how he got mistaken for being the actual suspect when he was not?
Well, he was put in a lineup with a couple other people, two of which were actually, I believe, police officers for some odd reason. And the suspect, as previously mentioned, was clean shaven and 5'10". but Beaver was selected out of the lineup, being a 6'2" man with a mustache.
6'2"? Wasn't the actual suspect 5'10"?
Yes, as previously mentioned,
Okay.
the original suspect was 5'10", roughly, estimated.
Okay, I see. Okay, moving on. Sorry. How long or what prompted the DNA taking or DNA sampling to occur? Because he was already in jail for 10 years. So what prompted it to happen at the time it happened? Why didn't it happen back when he was first in jail? Why did it take so long?
Well, the Innocence Project picked up on Beaver's case, and that was really what helped him get the DNA testing he needed.
I see. Okay. What time or how old was he when he got released by chance?
He was 41 years old.
Yes, at the time of exoneration, he was he was 41 years old,
Okay, I
meaning
see.
that when he was sentenced, when he was put in jail, he was 31. So
Yes.
he was
Okay.
fairly young when he was
So yeah, 41. So he would have been jail till he was 49. Am I right?
That is true. It
You
would
are
have been an
correct.
18-year sentence,
The
Okay.
math.
which
The
we they
maths.
very nice that he was exonerated 8 years earlier, but that's still 10 years that unfortunately he could not get back, which is a very sad thing to hear.
Do we know if he had a family at the time of his imprisonment or his wrongful conviction, or um any how do I say this, relatives or anyone of importance to him that may have been hurt during the time of his imprisonment?
Um, I believe that he I don't think so. I think it was. I think he, Bryce. He had some sort of family member, correct? Or was it just?
I believe he had a wife.
Yes, I think he had one,
Okay, I see.
but yeah, I don't know if they are still together, which again would be a shame. But I do think before this case he had a wife,
Okay.
and I
Yes.
don't.
And just trying to get a little more technical, I understand you guys might not have the answer to this. How does DNA testing actually like function? How does it go from just some blood sample or some spit or some hair to giving you uh, who the person actually is?
Well, it's obviously they take the sample and they're able to take the sample, whether it be a piece of hair, or spit, or blood, like you said, and they get enough to provide some good data. And I mean, from there, all I can assume is they plug it into their machine and it pops up a person that matches said DNA sample,
So they
which
just have like a big
is
data.
obviously
Do they have a big
as
database of everyone's like DNA, and then they compare DNAs like back and forth,
they
kind of?
yes they have. I'm sure
Okay, I
they
see.
have
I see.
a big data files of everyone, most people's DNA, and they're able to match it with said person, depending on who actually committed the crime.
Speaking back on Mr. Beaver's family, he was described as a family-loving person. And, that just really puts it in perspective here on how sad it was that he was put in prison for 10 years wrongfully.
Okay. Did he
It's
get? He had
just,
family. You said.
uh, I think, yeah, yes, he was a. I think he did have a wife. I think he was married, and like Bryce said, he was described as a family man, a family guy, if you will. Um,
Okay.
I can't. The thing is, I'm still hung up on the whole. He's 6'2" with a full mustache, and you're looking for a man who is 5'10" and clean shaven. With I understand that it was a long time ago, and maybe their technology wasn't the most advanced, but to go from 5'10" to 6'2", there must have been, and I'm just saying this, some sort of foul play at hand. I mean, wouldn't you agree, Bryce, that there's just something not adding up there?
Yeah, I really think they were just looking for someone to blame for the crime. You know what I mean?
Exactly. They're just pointing fingers at this point, and
Yeah.
it happens. It's not even just him. It's so many different people just being wrongfully accused for a crime that they didn't commit. And thank God for again DNA samples and stuff like that. If we didn't have those, there would be so many other people who would just be thrown in jail and would miss out on life because of a finger being pointed at them. It's horrible.
Yeah,
Okay.
and another thing, the suspect apparently had a gap in their teeth, but Mr. Beaver had a chip tooth, not a gap. So
Exactly.
it's another little mistake.
It 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 all comes down to the people.
So
Could
in
you
your
repeat
guys'
that, Gino?
opinion, in your
I'm
in
sorry.
your, sorry, mic lag.
Yeah,
It's fine. It happens. Mic lag. Okay.
yeah.
Technical difficulties, folks. So sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. We're
Okay. So
good.
in your guys' opinions, being
Some
that
more
this
technical difficulties.
being
Sorry.
that the reason for Mr. Beaver's conviction was pure eyewitness testimony. There was no video evidence. There was no, I guess you could say, fingerprints that matched him. Do you guys believe that eyewitness testimony should be a final say all and ends all, or like the final means when convicting someone, or should it be
Uh,
sort of just
you
a
see,
supportive piece of evidence, but not it shouldn't be used as the main piece of evidence? What are your opinion
You know,
on
I
that?
I
first.
believe
Sorry, Gino. Go
that
ahead.
no, yeah, and it's the thing is when you're getting an eyewitness report, you expect the whole truth. But there's some people here who just want, who knows, attention, something like that. They just want to. Sometimes they just want to lie, and you convict the wrong people, and stuff like this happened. Like Antonio Beaver spending a few years in prison, like 10 years. That's ridiculous.
Did you have something to add, Socrates?
Um, I think that DNA testing should always come first. You know what I mean? Like, I think eyewitness testimony. You know, like Gino was saying. Some people just want to lie. Like, some people are just looking for someone to blame, trying to get it over with. I think that's wrong. I think
Understood. Understood.
you got to take their time and get the right person with DNA testing. You know what I mean?
So, opposed from DNA testing, what other methods? Okay, so let's say eyewitness testimony. Just get rid of it. So we have
Hmm.
DNA testing. What other forms of evidence would you guys like to see that would have been able to clear up Mr. Beaver's name that maybe we have today, maybe we didn't have back in the late 1990s when this occurred?
Something that we have now definitely in most places, but probably not back then was CCTV footage and such. If you're caught on camera doing something, it's pretty easy to tell who it is. You know what I mean? But I don't know if they had that back then, especially where the crime had taken place. Whereas now,
Yeah.
Okay.
Now it would be different because it was a parking lot, so most likely there would be CCTV cameras, TV cameras, and they would definitely have caught the crime in action on camera.
Understood.
Well, again, this was I'm glad he was able to exonerate his case. Glad he didn't serve 18 years, but 10 years is still a long, long time for someone to serve, especially for a crime that they did not commit.
Okay. So,
and definitely glad he got some money back. $181,000. No,
Yeah, it's
no
a lot
small
of
amount
money.
of money, but is 10 years of his time that much?
Yeah.
It's just a
I don't
hard
know.
question
I
to
don't know.
ask yourself.
So, all right. So, in your guys' opinions, correct me if I'm wrong. You guys believe that although the witness may have simply mistaken Beaver for being the victim, you guys can also maybe draw a connection to the witness or to the victim, the person the crime happened to. Just kind of wanting to point a finger at someone and be like, "You did it," just to get it over with, instead of living the rest of our lives not knowing who robbed them. Is that essentially what you guys think? Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think so.
I think so.
It could have been a simple mistake as well with gap in the teeth and the chipped tooth, but I just don't see how you mix up a full mustache for someone who's shaven. Someone who
Exactly.
could have been considerably taller.
Exactly.
Just
There's a big difference. If you can't make out the structure of someone's teeth, that makes sense. But when it comes to height, the difference between 5'10" and 6'2" is a lot. It's not a small thing. You don't just mess that up. And I feel like, again, something must have gone wrong there. Something, whether it would be with the witness or the justice system itself, something was not right.
So this description of the suspect being 6'2" and 5'10", where did it? Or wait, I'm sorry, I misspoke. Of the suspect being 5'10" with a gap and being fully shaven, where did this come from? Was it did the was there some outside witness that saw it, or was it the victim that gave in like a drawing or a just an imagery of what the person looked like? Where did exactly this description come from?
Well, I'm pretty sure it came from the 26-year-old white woman who was in the parking lot and who did get attacked. I believe that when she was pointing out the assailant, she pointed out Beaver, which again doesn't make sense. But
also, she did in fact draw a sketch to the police of the man that committed the crime against her. And in the sketch, of course, was the gap in the teeth and everything, which could have been mistaken. The
Do
chipped
we
tooth.
know going back to the DNA and all that, all the fingerprints and all that? Do we know when exactly the fingerprints were collected from the door? Because I know DNA is not gonna be there forever. It's gonna get mixed up. But we know that it came from the inside of the door. Do we know how quickly or how relative to when it occurred? How long did it take for the DNA to be collected, and then for all the fingerprints or whatever, however they got the
well,
DNA?
it,
How long did it take?
it did. They did re on his behalf. They swabbed the inside of the door on October 2006, and he was only exonerated on March 29th, 2007. So, I'm assuming a year, or maybe a little less than a year, which
Actually,
is
Gino, the next day, they had swabbed they had swabbed the door and got the blood and fingerprints and everything to help prove him innocent.
Oh, okay.
But
So
the evidence
so
was
go
not
ahead.
huh.
used until the Innocence
2006.
Project had picked up his case.
Okay. So why do you think if they had the evidence, if they had the DNA the day after the incident occurred, or the victim at least reported the incident, why do you think it took 10 years, or probably closer to 11, being counting all the jury time and everything, the court time? Why do you think it took almost 11 years for someone to come along and say, let's make sure this is actually our person? Let's make sure it wasn't just that. Let's make sure that who we're pointing our fingers at is actually the person. Why do you think it took so long? Why didn't when they're arresting the person, when they were arresting Mr. Beaver, why didn't they first actually check the DNA, and instead of just going off of pure witness testimony. Why do you believe that so?
Well, I think that listen, the whole DNA thing, as well as it works, it definitely has its moments where it's not entirely correct.
Was
um,
at the time was DNA still like a fairly wasn't I might be mistaken, but wasn't DNA like profiling or DNA like sampling, wasn't it still a relatively new kind of technology? Wasn't it still a kind of, I guess you could say, like faulty in some certain ways? Maybe it wasn't a perfect. Maybe even this wouldn't be that much better than. Maybe this wouldn't have been that much better than the the eyewitness testimony, because maybe it's very limited compared to what we have today. I think today we have much more extensive ways to analyze data, analyze DNA. I think maybe back in 1996 when it occurred, uh, being that the profiling of data was so, or DNA was so new, do you think that that could have been partially a reason for them not using the DNA earlier?
sorry, goodness. Um, DNA testing or profiling was developed in, I want to say, 1985. Um, it as old as it is, it makes sense to trust it because computers, they're they're just amazing, you know. They could just, it's hard to explain. Bryce, you understand where I'm coming from, correct? It's just, you know.
Back on the question that was asked. I think that they just kind of pointed the finger at him and got him guilty or whatever. And they weren't really looking into DNA testing. They didn't want to. They didn't want to prove him innocent. They just assumed he was guilty. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see. I see. I understand. I
I
understand.
see.
Okay. So what I've gathered for the most part is that based off this case, eyewitness testimony may not be the most solid form of evidence when it comes to convicting someone of a crime. That maybe people should maybe hold eyewitness testimony at a lower value, as people can obviously be mistaken on accident. But sometimes, even as you guys may believe, people can be more persuaded to just kind of choose someone as they want. They may just want the case to be over with. Um, and so what I was thinking is,
Sorry, technical difficulty.
Yeah, no, there was a lizard.
so relative to this, the actual suspect, as you guys have told me, was when the victim described it, it was described to be 5'10". But Mr. Beaver is 6'2". So if you do the math, that's a 4-inch difference. So 4 inches is a good amount. That could also be comparable to the height difference that would occur between someone of 5'10" and someone of
I see exactly where you're coming from.
sorry,
And I
100%.
I think I understand.
my apologies.
But, please,
My apologies.
yes, please
But
continue.
someone
Yes,
of
but
with the height of Napoleon Bonaparte. Someone of the height of Napoleon Bonaparte.
I I think what I'm getting at is I feel like Napoleon Bonaparte is a good thing to bring up because he did not like. Like the assailant, he did not like white women. Turns out that they both had the same problem. When but I see where you're coming from. In a matter of Napoleon's height.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, 100%.
100%.
Okay. So, just thinking back on it again. So, I think we've talked a good amount of the logistics of everything, the data, how everything was collected. I think we've got a fair grasp of um the case and the problem is that obvious. Excuse me. Sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Allergy season. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Um,
terrible.
but as I was saying, we have.
I think we have a good grasp on the case.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
All right. So
I get what you mean.
Allergy
We
season
do
is rough.
we do have a good grasp on the case and like you said, the logistics and I do agree. Sorry.
right. All right. So yeah. Sorry. As I was saying. So essentially, or my fault. Basically, what we're saying is, or sorry, what you guys have been talking about is that eyewitness testimony should be held at a lower bearing when. How do I put this? When going to be used as evidence. That is because this case can be seen as a prime example of how eyewitness testimony can be taken or screwed up and then be used to take 10 years away of someone's life from them and for a measly $181,000. So that's basically what I'm getting from this. I understand it all. You guys have summarized everything up well good. Very good. So
Definitely.
so before we leave,
Allergy
Damn.
season.
my
Allergies, man.
apologies. So before we leave, is there any summarizing maybe thoughts or ideas that you guys you guys would like to put forth?
Truly a terrible example, but not as bad as some cases I've read with the Innocence Project and such of people whose whole lives are ruined due to this. In the case of Antonio Beaver, it was only 10 years, and he was awarded a sum of money. However, I do not think the sum of money was high enough because of how much money he probably could have made in those 10 years. But
Understood.
yeah.
Okay, so all right, just to conclude everything up, I want to talk a little bit more about the Innocence Project and kind of what they stand for. What do you guys, or do you believe that we should have more, maybe organizations or associations like the Innocence Project around to help kind of go through? Because I know there's that Mr. Beaver is maybe one of like maybe even upwards of 1,000,000 people, not million, sorry, 100,000 people that have
Yeah.
been wrongly convicted. So
In this day and age, honestly, it's harder to trust the justice system. And organizations like these really help out people who, again, have been wrongly accused for a crime they haven't committed. And it's just it's more help than it is harm.
yeah, I understand. Oh yeah, and just one last thing, just to kind of conclude us here and send everyone on their way. Kind of a bit more nuance. Do you guys think that with the addition of AI and the ability that AI has, do you think that it will be even harder in the future to make or for evidence to be a solid or to be concrete, unless it's some forensics or something that is can 100% tie a crime to a person like such? If with the ability that AI has, how do you think the usage of surveillance videos or footage will be altered or weakened when used for evidence?
nowadays, so much of this AI stuff and this technology, stuff can be very easily faked. I think that DNA evidence is very concrete, and it really just it can tie a person to a crime. Really, it doesn't get messed up very often compared to surveillance footage or whatever that can now be edited these days. So yeah,
AI is very, very advanced. You can make a lot of things with AI. Make a lot of things. Deep fakes are one of the scariest things because someone could commit a crime and put your face on it, and bam, you're convicted for a crime. You weren't even in the same state as them, which is
I see.
just something to be worried about.
truly wrong.
Right, so I think we've had a very productive conversation here. I think the audience has learned a good amount about the case.
Definitely.
I hope that the innocence project continues. I
Sorry.
hope that the innocence project continues clearing up people's names, because there's plenty of people, as I said earlier, that are going into the same things. And so I just want to thank both you guys for taking the time to sit down and speak and let the audience know
Of course,
just
yes.
the extremity of how these cases can be and how associations like the Innocence Project are helping better the situations. The situations aren't ever going to be perfect, especially with the addition of AI, as we said. But they help better the situations. So I just want to say one last thank you to Plato and Aristotle, or Plato and Socrates, sorry, for sitting down with me and having a conversation.
Of course.
So that'll be it for today's podcast. Just start clearing up or kind of circling everything up. That was the podcast about Mr. Beaver and his wrongful conviction, and how it took 10 years for his name to be cleared, and the issues regarding conviction, maybe not totally present day, but conviction during the late 90s and maybe even the early 2000s. And
Different time.
Yes, different time. And the major benefits of associations like the Innocence Project. So we just want to say thank you again for listening. This was The Syringes, and we hope you come for another podcast. Goodbye.
Yes. Goodbye.
Goodbye.